doing some amazing films. Now we are going to be going to do the well, yeah, this one's not quite so amazing. Yeah, I think we've done well, my favorite brunette. That was okay. My Man Godfrey, that was a really good one. I really liked that one. Yeah, we've done some great films, and tonight's an Ed Wood classic, which I mean, but it's got Vampire and Bela Lugosi in it. I mean, how could it be bad? You know, I mean, it's going to be awesome. Of course, it's going to be great. Anyway, that's what we're watching tonight. And then after that, assuming my Neverwinter crew is still awake, sometimes they are, sometimes they aren't. We're going to do some Dungeons and Dragons action. Okay, so I think my character's like level 20, I think 21, something like that. Having a very good time with it. I tell you what, oh, by the way, last night I finally getting the knack of Phantasy Star Online 2. You know, it's weird. It's a weird game. It is a very weird game, but I like it. It's actually it's really fun. But I tell you what, the UI, and all the menus, good lord, whoever designed all that needs to be horsewhipped. It's terrible. Never wintering later tonight. Yes, after movie night there, Skip. Yes. Shadowtronics just took a nap. Yeah, so well, yeah, actually, if yeah, well, yeah, well, I mean, like we're teaming up with Shadowtronics. We're working on those quests there, and I think you had some quests that we were doing as well, Skip. Right? I don't know what level you are. Nice graphics though, says Agent One. Oh, it's well, actually, that's the weird thing too. It's very like the art style for Phantasy Star Online is. It's just like amazing, and then they do like these weird things, like they had like a live concert like in the shopping plaza where, you know, and like or I guess there are people just interested in just hanging out online and maybe doing a bit of like role play, I guess, just coming to watch this you know, like this this AI well, it's not real AI, but an NPC, like you know, perform a song, you know, in live for everyone. It was just really weird. Yeah, I'm really enjoying it, but it's weird. I don't know. It's hard to explain. You kind of got to play it. Okay, Skip Donahue's level 21. Okay, the dwarf can drink. Okay. Oh wow, we earned that follow there from Mr. Lando Garden here. Well, thank you for that. But anyway, let's do it. Let's get on with our book. So it's time to kick back. It's time to relax. Before we get started, first of all, thank you for the people who've thrown down a hosts. Thank you. I do appreciate those, and I like them a lot. And I was also going to say, yeah, if you are enjoying the stream, below the stream on the PC or above the stream, if you're watching on the app, there is the share stream buttons. So yeah, if you're enjoying it, let your friends on Twitter know about it. Let your friends on Facebook know about this stream here on Mixer, and that would be awesome. You know, just they'll get a link to the stream. You maybe write up a little thing about what you like about the stream, what you like about book club. That is very, very useful for me. Oh, and one last thing before we get in. Our main stream is here on Mixer, mixer.com/CarringtonTV. For the duration of the Rona, I'm restreaming. I normally, I would never really do it, but for the duration, I'm restreaming Book Club out to Twitch and to Periscope and to YouTube as well. Just expanding our reach, because man, 22 million people lost their job this month. There's a ton more banished to their homes to work from home. Schools are out.
Treasure chest, King Carrington's treasure. I love Mrs. Shadow.
Ah, wow. Oh, that's very well. Well, thank you for those embers there, Shadowtronics. Throwing down embers to let everyone know how much he loves his wife. I love Mrs. Shadow. There we go. That's very cool. Anyway, they're both spending some time. They're both with us here right now. Very cool. Yeah. So with 22 million people out of work, a ton more working from home, school being out, Yeah. I'm just restreaming out to hopefully keep some more people entertained, a little distracted from the present situation if they need to. We're going to get through it together, and yeah, we're going to do that. All right, there we go. That's right, facts, says Agent 1. That's right. Let's do it. The Beetle Horde by Victor Rousseau. This is part 3 of 3. The hideous monsters leaped into the cockpits and began their abominable meal. These are like giant, huge beetles. Okay, conclusion. Okay, so starting off with a summary. Okay, here we go. Tommy Travers and James Dodd of the Traverse Antarctic Expedition crash in their plane somewhere near the South Pole and are seized by a swarm of man-sized beetles. They are carried down to Submundia, a world under the Earth's crust, where the beetles have developed their civilization to an amazing point, using a wretched race of degenerated humans whom they breed as cattle for food. Bullets, shrapnel, shell, nothing can stop the trillions of famished man-sized beetles, which, led by a madman, sweep down over the human race. The insect horde is ruled by a human from the outside world, a drug-doped madman. Dodd recognizes this man as Brahm, the archaeologist who had been lost years before at the pole and given up for dead by a world he had hated because it refused to accept his radical scientific theories. His fiendish mind now plans the horrible revenge of leading his unconquerable horde of monster insects forth to ravage the world, destroy the human race, and establish a new era. The era of the insect. The world has to be warned of the impending doom. The two, with Heidi, a girl of Submundia, escape and pass through menacing dangers to within 2 miles of the exit. There, suddenly, Tommy sees towering over him a creature that turns his blood cold, a gigantic praying mantis. Before he has time to act, the monster springs at him. Okay, now actually, I just need a second here because my restream chat window is not turned on for some reason. And, okay, one second. Let me just grab this thing here, one second. It was going so well. Then it's like, oh. Oh, I can't spell, that's why. Oh, boy. Oh, we've got to search down. That's why I can't find it. There it is. Copy. Oh, yeah. Okay, and paste and go. Okay, don't save changes. There we go. Okay, there we go. Okay, boy, oh boy. Okay, that was okay. Well, yeah, I thought we were off to a good start, and then all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, I forgot to turn stuff on. Let's do it. Chapter 7: Through the Inferno. Fortunately, the monster miscalculated its leap. The huge legs, whirling through the air, came within a few inches of Tommy's head, but passed over him, and the mantis plunged into the stream. Instantly, the water was alive with leaping things, with faces of such grotesque horror that Tommy sat paralyzed in his rocking shell, unable to avert his eyes. Things no more than a foot or two in length, to judge from the slender eel-like bodies that leaped into the air, but things with catfish heads and tentacles and eyes waving on stalks, things with claw-like appendages to their ventral fins and mouths that widened to fearful size, so that the whole head seemed to disappear above them, disclosing fangs like wolves. Instantly, the water was churned into phosphorescent fire as they precipitated themselves upon the struggling mantis, whose enormous form, extending halfway from shore to shore, was covered with the river monsters, gnawing, rending, tearing. What's up there, Bat Games? Good morning. Luckily, the struggles of the dying monster carried it downstream instead of up. In a few moments, the immediate danger was past, and suddenly Heidi awoke. Sat up. "Where are we?" she cried. Oh, I can see, I can see. Something has burned away from my eyes. I know this place. A wise man of my people once came here and returned to tell of it. We must go on. Soon we shall be safe on the wide river. But there is another way that leads to here. We must go on. We must go on. Even as she spoke, they heard the distant rasping of the beetle legs, and before the shells were well in mid-current, they saw the Beetle Horde coming round the bend in front of them. Bram reclining on his shell couch and drawn by the 8 trained beetles. Landegardnir's frozen. Frozen in fear? Or the stream froze? I don't know. Bram saw the fugitives, and a roar of ironic mirth broke from his lips, resounding high above the strident rasping of the beetle legs and roaring over the marshes. "I've got you, Dodden Travers," he bellowed, as the trained beetles hovered above the shell canoes. "You thought you were clever, but you're at my mercy. Now's your last chance, Dodd. I'll save you still if you'll submit to me. If you'll admit that there were fossil monotremes before the Pleistocene epoch. Come, it's so simple. Say it after me, the marsupial lion." "You go to hell," yelled Dodd, nearly upsetting his shell as he shook his fist at his enemy. High above the rasping sound came Bram's shrill whistle, just audible to human ears, though probably sounding like the roar of thunder to those of the beetles. There was no need to wonder what it was. It was the call to slaughter. Like a black cloud, the beetles shot forward. A serried phalanx covered the 2 men and the girl, hovering a few feet overhead, the long legs dangling to within arm's reach. And a terrible cry of fear broke from Heidi's lips. Suddenly, Tommy remembered Bram's cigarette lighter. He pulled it from his pocket and ignited it. Small as the flame was, it was actually much more powerful than the brighter phosphorescence of the fungi behind them. Is that a real word, actinically? Apparently not. I guess it's a typo. Much more powerful than the brighter phosphorescence of the fungi behind them. The beetle cloud overhead parted. The strident sound was broken into a confused buzzing as the terrified, blinded beetles plopped into the stream. None of them, fortunately, fell into either of the 3 shells, but the mass of struggling monsters in the water was hardly less formidable to the safety of the occupants than the menacing cloud overhead. "Get clear," Tommy yelled to Dodd, trying to help the shell along with his hands. Yes, they're in their little shell canoes. He heard Bram's cry of baffled rage, and looking backward could not refrain from a laugh of triumph. Bram's trained steeds had taken fright and overset him. Bram had fallen into the red mud beside the stream, from which he was struggling up, plastered from head to foot, and shaking his fists and evidently cursing, though his words could not be heard. "How about your marsupial lion now, Bram?" yelled Dodd. "No monotremes before the Pleistocene. Do you get that? That's my slogan now and forevermore." Bram shrieked and raved, and seemed to be inciting the beetles to a renewed assault. The air was still thick with them, but Tommy was waving the cigarette lighter in a flaming arc, which cleared the way for them. Then suddenly came disaster. The flame went out. Tommy closed the lighter with a snap and opened it. In vain. In his excitement, he must have spilled all the contents, for it would not catch. Bram saw and yelled derision. The beetle cloud was thickening. Tommy, now abreast of his companions on the widening stream, saw the imminent end. And then, once more, fate intervened. For, leaping through the air, out of the places where they had lain concealed, 6 mantises launched themselves at their beetle prey. Those awful bounds of the long-legged monsters, the scourges of the insect world, carried them clear from one bank to the other, fortunately for the occupants of the shells. In an instant, the beetle cloud dissolved, and it had all happened in a few seconds. Before Dodd or Tommy had quite taken in the situation, the mantises, each carrying a victim in its grooved legs, had vanished like the beetles. There was no sign of Bram. The three were alone upon the face of the stream, which went swirling upward into renewed darkness. Tommy saw Dodd bend toward Heidi as she lay on her shell couch. He heard the sound of a noisy kiss, and he lay back in the hollow of his shell with the feeling that nothing that could happen in the future could be worse than what they had passed through. Yeah. Very good. Cosmic Pizza. Where'd that one come from? 125 sparks for some Cosmic Pizza. Maybe those ones are just maybe those stickers are just for this oh no, where'd that come from? I don't see it on my list of things. Is it under channel? No, I don't know. I don't know where that came from. You must have like a different set of stickers on your on your device. Interesting. Oh, is it the Samsung stickers? All right. Interesting. Okay. Days went by. Days when the sense of dawning freedom filled their hearts with hope. Heidi told Dodd and Tommy that, according to the legends of her people, the river ran into the world from which they had been driven by the floods ages before. There had been no further signs of Brahm or the Beetle Horde, and Dodd and Tommy surmised that it had been disorganized by the attack of the mantises, and that Brahm was engaged in regaining his control over it. But neither of them believed that the respite would be a long one, and for that reason they rested ashore only for the briefest intervals, just long enough to snatch a little sleep, and to eat some of the shrimps that Heidi was adept at finding, or to pull some juicy fruit surreptitiously from a tree. Incidents there were, nevertheless, during those days. For hours their shells were followed by a school of the luminous river monsters, which nevertheless made no attempt to attack them. And once, hearing a cry from Heidi as she was gathering shrimps, Dodd ran forward to see her battling furiously with a luminous scorpion 8 feet in length that had sprung at her from its lurking place behind a pear shrub. Dodd succeeded in stunning and dispatching the monster without suffering any injury from it, but the strain of the period was beginning to tell on all of them. Worst of all, they seemed to have left all of the luminous vegetation behind them and were entering a region of almost total darkness, in which Heidi had to be their eyes. Something had happened to the girl's sight in the journey over the petrol spring. As a matter of fact, the third or nictitating membrane, which the humans of Submundia possessed, in common with birds, had been burned away. Heidi could see as well as ever in the dark, but she could bear more light than formerly as well. Unobtrusively, she assumed command of the party. She anticipated their wants, dug shrimps in the darkness, and fed Tommy and Dodd with her own hands. "God, what a girl!" breathed Dodd to his friend. "I've always had the reputation of being a woman-hater, Tommy." "What?" "Man. But once I get that girl to civilization, I'm going to take her to the nearest little church around the corner in record time." "I wish you luck, old man, I'm sure," answered Tommy. Dodd's words did not seem strange to him. Civilization was growing very remote to him, and Broadway seemed like a memory of some previous incarnation. The river was growing narrower again, and swifter too. On the last day or night of their journey, though they did not know that it was to be their last, it swirled so fiercely that it threatened every moment to overset their beetle shells. Suddenly Tommy began to feel giddy. He gripped the side of his shell with his hand. "Tommy, we're going round!" shouted Dodd in front of him. There was no longer any doubt of it. The shells were revolving in a vortex of rushing, foaming water. "Heidi!" they shouted. The girl's voice came back thickly across the roaring torrent. The circles grew smaller. Tommy knew that he was being sucked nearer and nearer to the edge of some terrific whirlpool in that inky blackness. Now he could no longer hear Dodd's shouts, and the shell was tipping so that he could feel the water rushing along the edge of it. But for the exercise of centrifugal force, he would have been flung from his perilous seat, for he was leaning inward at an angle of 45 degrees. You make me all hungry there, Chris. Then suddenly his progress was arrested. He felt the shell being drawn to the shore. He leaped out, and Heidi's strong hands dragged the shell out of the torrent, while Tommy sank down, gasping. "What's the matter?" he heard Dodd demanding. "There's no more river," said Heidi calmly. "It goes into a hole in the ground. So much I've heard from the wise men of my people. They say that it is near such a place that they fled from the flood in years gone by." "Then we're near safety," shouted Tommy. "That river must emerge as a stream somewhere in the upper world, Dodd. I wonder where the road lies." "There's a road here," came Heidi's calm voice. "Let us put on our shells again, since who knows whether there may not be beetles here." "Did you ever see such a girl as that?" demanded Dodd ecstatically. First she saves our lives, and then she thinks of everything. Good Lord, she'll remember my meals and to wind my watch for me and—" But Heidi's voice, some distance ahead, interrupted Dodd's soliloquy, and hoisting the beetle shells upon their backs, they started along the rough trail that they could feel with their feet over the stony ground. It was still as dark as pitch, but soon they found themselves traveling up a sunken way that was evidently a dry watercourse. And now and again Heidi's reassuring voice would come from in front of them. The road grew steeper. There could no longer be any doubt that they were ascending toward the surface of the earth. But even the weight of the beetle shells and the steepness could not account for the feeling of intense weakness that took possession of them. Time and again they stopped, panting. "We must be very near the surface, Dodd," said Tommy. "We've surely passed the center of gravity. That's what makes it so difficult." "Come on," Heidi said in her quiet voice, stretching out her hand through the darkness. And for very shame they had to follow her. The science behind this hollow earth is not very sound. Let's put it like that. On and on, hour after hour, up the steep ascent, resting only long enough to make them realize their utter fatigue. On because Heidi was leading them, and because in the belief that they were about to leave that awful land behind them, their desires lent new strengths to their limbs continuously. Suddenly, Heidi uttered a fearful cry. Her ears had caught what became apparent to Dodd and Jimmy several seconds later. Far down in the hollow of the earth, increased by the echoes that came rumbling up, they heard the distant, strident rasp of the beetle swarm. Then it was Dodd's turn to support Heidi and whisper consolation in her ears. No thought of resting now. If they were to be overwhelmed at last by the monsters, they meant to be overwhelmed in the upper air. It was growing insufferably hot. Blasts of air, as if from a furnace, began to rush up and down past them, and the trail was growing steeper still, and was slippery as glass. "What is it, Jim?" Tommy panted, as Dodd, leaving Heidi for a moment, came back to him. "I'd say lava," Dodd answered. "If only one could see something. I don't know how she finds her way. My impression is that we're coming out through the interior of an extinct volcano." But where are there volcanoes in the South Polar regions?" inquired Tommy. "Well, there's Mount Erebus and Mount Terror in South Victoria Land, active volcanoes discovered by Sir Jim Ross in 1841, and again by Borchgrevink in 1899. If that's where we're coming out, well, Tommy, we're doomed, because it's the heart of the polar continent. We might as well turn back." "But we won't turn back," said Tommy. "I'm damned if we do." "We're damned if we don't," said Dodd. "Come along, please," sang Heidi's voice high up the slope. They struggled on, and now a faint luminosity was beginning to penetrate that infernal darkness. The rasping of the beetle legs, too, was no longer audible. Perhaps they had thrown Bram off their track. Perhaps in the darkness he had not known which way they had gone after leaving the whirlpool. That thought encouraged them to a last effort. They pushed their flagging limbs upward through an inferno of heated air. Suddenly, Dodd uttered a yell and pointed up. "God!" ejaculated Tommy. Then he seized Dodd in his arms and nearly crushed him, for high above them, a pinpoint in the black void, they saw a star. They were almost at the Earth's surface. One more effort, and suddenly the ground seemed to give beneath them. They breathed the outer air and went sliding down a chute of sand and stopped, half buried at the bottom. Yeah. Well, we're off to a rocketing start. Yeah, there's no let up in action on this one here. It's just non-stop pulp from start to finish. Start to finish. All right, so just taking a quick peek at the Twitch thing there. We're getting never really had much luck there. All right, Borrowing Orange threw down a host. Thank you, Borrowing Orange. It's very cool of you. Yeah, and thank you for everyone who's put them down, who's done a little tweeting, who shared the stream out too. I see a couple of those popping up on Twitter. Thank you for those. We're just helping spread our entertainment with our friends. Yeah. All right, let's sip of coffee and we'll get back into our story here. We still got a couple, 3 more chapters to go, I think. So far, so good. Yeah. So what's Borrowing? Borrowing Orange. Yeah, you were with us last night. That's right. You were telling us all about that car there. ...2017 Ford GT Mustang. Yeah. I had the hardest time identifying those little pictures that people put in. They're all so tiny on this monitor. Look at YouTube chat. What's going on in YouTube chat? Where is the YouTube chat? Hang on. How do I get there? One second. I need to pull it up. YouTube. Bring up my name, Stephen J. Carrington. Live. Oh, we better mute that. One second. Mute that tab. I was going to get... I said Mustang. It was a Mustang, right? Okay. We do. We got someone tuning in there on the... yeah, that's weird. It's not showing up in my restream chat. Interesting. I don't know why. It should. It should. Yeah, no one's here, says Game. Yeah. All right. I will take your word for it. It's a Ford GT, isn't it? Isn't it a Ford GT? A Ford Mustang GT? I don't know. It's a car. I am not good with cars. I'm not good with cars. I like driving them. I like driving them in Forza Horizon, but that's only because I can take everything off-road. Okay. Let us get on with it. Just a Ford GT. Oh, I thought like the GT was like you know, like the... You know how like you have like SE for like special edition and stuff like that. No, okay, a Ford GT is its own thing. Okay, well that's I learn something new every day. All right, Lander Gardenier, Nana Shuffle. Good morning. Good afternoon. Yeah, okay, we'll get back in a second. Just reminding, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. It's a movie night here. We're going to be watching Plan 9 from Outer Space. It's going to be great. It's terrible. It's a terrible movie. But it's going to be fun. It's going to be fun. All right, let's do it. Let's get on with it. Chapter 8, Recaptured. Where are we? Each demanded of the other as they staggered out. It was a moonless night, and the air was chill, but they were certainly nowhere near the polar regions, for there was no trace of snow to be seen anywhere. All about them was sand, with here and there a spiny shrub standing up stiff and erect and solitary. When they had disengaged themselves from the clinging sand, they could see that they were apparently in the hollow of a vast crater that must have been 1/2 a mile in circumference. It was low and worn down to an elevation of not more than 200 or 300 feet, and evidently the volcano that had thrown it up had been extinct for millennia. "Water!" gasped Dodd. They looked all about them. They could see no sign of a spring anywhere, and both were parched with their thirst after their terrific climb. "We must find water, Heidi," said Tommy. Why, what's the matter?" Heidi was pointing upward at the starry heaven and shivering with fear. "Eyes!" she cried. "Big beetles waiting for us up there." No, Heidi," Dodd explained. "Those are stars. They are worlds, places where people live." "Will you take me up there?" asked Heidi. "Oh, no, this is our world," said Dodd. "And by the sun will rise. That's a big ball of fire up there. He watches over the world and gives us light and warmth. Don't be afraid, I'll take care of you." He's very condescending. "Heidi is not afraid with Jimmy Dodd to take care of her," replied the girl with dignity. "Heidi smells water over there." She pointed across one side of the crater. "Then we'd better hurry," said Tommy, "because I can't hold out much longer." Oh boy, oh boy. I'm just going to pop out this chat window just so I can keep a... What's up there, car guy? 10 p.m. Eastern? What's that? Pop out chat. There we go. Let me throw that over there. Ba 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 ba. Yeah. So car guy. No, on Sunday, Short Story Sunday starts at 2 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern. And then Sunday we have movie night at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. And then there's gaming afterwards. But yeah, for the most part, the rest of the week, 7 p.m. 7 p.m. Pacific, 10 p.m. Eastern is the usual gaming time. But we have book club in the mornings. Yeah. Alrighty, let's get on with it. Okay. Back to our book. Uh-oh. The three scrambled over the soft sand, which sucked in their feet to the ankle at every step. It was with the greatest difficulty that they succeeded in reaching the crater's summit, low though it was. Then Dodd uttered a cry and pointed. In front of them extended a long pool of water with a scrubby growth around the edges. The ground was firmer here, and they hurried toward it. Tommy was the first to reach it. He lay down on his face and drank eagerly. He had taken in a quart before he discovered that the water was saline. At the same time, Dodd uttered an exclamation of disgust. Heidi, too, after sipping a little of the fluid, had stood up, chattering excitedly in her own language. But she was not chattering about the water. She was pointing toward the scrub. "Men there," she cried. "Men like you and Tommy, Jimmy Dodd." Tommy and Dodd looked at each other, the water already forgotten in their excitement at Heidi's information, which neither of them doubted. You a car guy? Okay. Yeah, everyone's got different names all over the place. Tommy and Dodd looked at each other, the water already forgotten in their excitement at Heidi's information, which neither of them doubted. Brave as she was, the girl now hung back behind Dodd, letting the two men take precedence of her. The water, saline as it was, had partly quenched their thirst. They felt their strength reviving. And it was growing light. In the east, the sky was already flecked with yellow-pink. They felt a thrill of intense excitement at the prospect of meeting others of their kind. "Where do you think we are?" asked Tommy. Dodd stopped to look at a shrub that was growing near the edge of the pool. "I don't think. I know, Tommy," he answered. "This is Wattle." "Yes?" "We're somewhere in the interior regions of the Australian continent, and that's not going to help us much." Over there, panted Heidi. "Hold me, Jimmy Dodd. I can't see. Oh, this terrible light." She screwed her eyelids tightly together to shut out the pale light of dawn. The men had already discovered that the third membrane had been burned away. "We must get her out of here," whispered Dodd to Tommy. "Somewhere where it's dark, before the sun rises. Let's go back to the entrance of the crater." But Heidi, her arm extended, persisted. Over there. Suddenly, a spear came whirling out of a growth of wattle beside the pool. It whizzed past Tommy's face and dropped into the sand behind. Between the trunks of the wattles they could see the forms of a party of aborigines watching them intently. Tommy held up his arms and moved forward with a show of confidence that he was far from feeling, and after what he had escaped in the underworld, he was in no mood to be massacred now. But the aborigines were evidently not hostile. It was probable that the spear had not been aimed to kill. At the sight of the two white men and the white woman, they came forward doubtfully, then more fearlessly, shouting in their language. In another minute, Tommy and Dodd were in the center of a group of wondering natives. Especially Heidi. 3 or 4 djinns, or black women, had crept out of the scrub and were already examining her with guttural cries and fingering the hair garment that she wore. This is like really colonial kind of, okay. Water, water, said Tommy, pointing to his throat, and then to a pool with a frown of disgust. The natives grinned and led the 3 to a short distance to a place where a large hollow had been scooped in the sandy floor of the desert. It was full of water, perfectly sweet to the taste. The 3 drank gratefully. Suddenly, the edge of the sun appeared above the horizon, gilding the sand with gold. The sunlight fell upon the 3, and Heidi uttered a terrible cry of distress. She dropped upon the sand, her hands pressed to her eyes convulsively. Tommy and Dodd dragged her into the thickest part of the scrub, where she lay moaning. They contrived bandages from the remnants of their clothing, and these, dampened with cold water, and were bound over the girl's eyes, alleviated her suffering somewhat. Meanwhile, the aborigines had prepared a meal of roast opossum. After their long diet of shrimps, it tasted like ambrosia to the 2 men. Much to their surprise, Heidi seemed to enjoy it too. The 3 squatted in the scrub among the friendly natives, discussing their situation. "These fellows will save us," said Dodd. "It may be that we're quite near the coast, but anyway, they'll stick to us, even if only out of curiosity. They'll take us somewhere. But as soon as we get Heidi to safety, we'll have to go back along our trail. We mustn't lose our direction. Suppose I was laughed at when I get back, called a liar. I tell you, we've got to have something to show, to prove my statements, before I can persuade anybody to fit out an expedition into Submundia. Even those 3 beetle shells that we dropped in the crater won't be conclusive evidence for the type of mind that sits in the chairs of science today. And speaking of that, we must get those natives to carry these shells for us. I tell you, nobody will believe—" "What's that?" cried Tommy sharply, as a rasping sound rose above the cries of the frightened aboriginals. But there was no need to ask. Out of the crater, 2 enormous beetles were winging their way toward them, 2 beetles larger than any that they had seen. Fully 7 feet in length, they were circling about each other, apparently engaged in a vicious battle. The fearful beaks stabbed at the flesh beneath the shells, and they alternately stabbed and drew back, all the while approaching the party, which watched them, petrified with terror. "It was, your friend is streaming, can we raid him? No." "We're in the middle of a book." The fearful beaks stabbed at the flesh beneath the shells, and they alternately stabbed and drew back, all the while approaching the party, which watched them, petrified with terror. It was evident that the monsters had no conception of the presence of humans. Blinded by the sun, only one thing could have induced them to leave the dark depths of Submundia. That was the mating instinct. The beetles were evidently rival leaders of some swarm, engaged in a duel to the death. Round and round they went in a dizzy maze, stabbing and thrusting, jaws closing on flesh, until they dropped, close-locked in battle, not more than 20 feet from the little party of blacks and whites, both squirming in the agonies of death. "I don't think that necessarily means that the swarm is on our trail," said Tommy, a little later, as the 3 stood beside the shells that they had discarded. "Those 2 were strays, lost from the swarm, and maddened by the mating instinct. Still, it might be as well to wear these things for a while, in case they do follow us." "You're right," answered Dodd, as he placed one of the shells around Heidi. We've got to get this little lady to civilization, and we've got to protect our lives in order to give this great new knowledge to the world. If we are attacked, you must sacrifice your life for me, Tommy, so that I can carry back the news." "Righto," answered Tommy with alacrity. "You bet I will, Jim." Good Lord, these guys are good friends. Man. Yeah. "If we are attacked, you must sacrifice your life for me, Tommy, so I can carry back the news." "Righto," says Tommy. This is ridiculous. Okay, it's great, but yeah, okay. The glaring sun of mid-afternoon was shining down upon the desert, but Heidi was no longer in pain. It was evident that she was fast becoming accustomed to the sunlight, though she still kept her eyes screwed up tightly and had to be helped along by Dodd and Jimmy. In high good humor, the three reached the encampment to find that the Aborigines were feasting on the dead Beatles, while the two eldest members of the party had proudly donned the shells. It was near sunset before they finally started. Dodd and Tommy had managed to make it clear to them that they wished to reach civilization, but how near this was, of course, they had no means of determining. They noted, however, that the party started in a southerly direction. The Beatles had some... That's okay, I think there's a different kind of Beatles there, Chris. "I should say," said Dodd, "that we are in South Australia, probably 300 or 400 miles from the coast. We've got a long journey before us, but these natives will know how to procure food for us." They certainly knew how to get water, for just as it began to grow dark, when the three were already tormented by thirst, they stopped at what seemed a mere hollow among the stones and boulders that strewed the face of the desert, and scooped away the sand, leaving a hole which quickly filled with clear, cold water of excellent taste. After which they made signs that they were to camp there for the night. The moon was riding high in the sky. As it grew dark, Heidi opened her eyes, saw the luminary, and uttered an exclamation, this time not of fear, but of wonder. "Moon," said Dodd. "That's all right, girl. She watches over the night, as the sun does during the day." "Heidi likes the moon better than the sun," said the girl wistfully, "but the moon not strong enough to keep away the Beatles." "If I was you, I'd forget about the Beatles, Heidi," said Dodd. "They won't come out of that hole in the ground. You'll never see them again." And as he spoke, they heard a familiar rasping sound far in the distance. "How the wind blows," said Tommy, desperately resolved not to believe his ears. "I think a storm is coming up." But Heidi, with a scream of fear, was clinging to Dodd, and the Aborigines were on their feet, spears and boomerangs in their hands, looking northward. Out of that north, a little black cloud was gathering, a cloud that spread gradually as a thundercloud until it covered a good part of the sky, and still more of the sky, and still more. All the while that faint, distant rasping was audible, but it did not increase in volume. It was as if the Beatles had halted until the full number of the swarm had come up out of the crater. Oh boy, I think the invasion's about to begin. Beatles and Beatles. Then the cloud, which by now covered half the sky, began to take geometric form. Yep, they're going to need a lot of health packs to get through the fight against these Beatles. Then the cloud, which by now covered half the sky, began to take geometric form. It grew square. The ragged edges seemed to trim themselves away. Streaks of light shot through it at right angles, as if it was marshalling itself into companies. The doomed men and the girl stood perfectly still, staring at that phenomenon. They knew that only a miracle could save them. They did not even speak, but Heidi clung more tightly to Dodd's arm. "Broke the spark crystal. Is it stuck?" "It's certainly making amazing progress, that's for sure." "Oh, hey, well, thank you, Mr. Crow. Yeah. We got movie night coming up later tonight, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern there. Doing Plan 9 from Outer Space. Yeah. Oh, you're saying the first crystal is completed? Yeah. It's been amazing, like the amount of sparks coming in. It's been amazing. Shadowtronics meant the first crystal was completely filled up, so it starts a brand new one, which is a different color. Yeah. Alrighty. Then suddenly the cloud spread upward and covered the face of the moon. Well, this is goodbye, Tommy, said Dodd, gripping his friend's hand. God, I wish I had a revolver or a knife. He looked at Heidi. That is terrible. That's just terrible. He's like, I wish I had a revolver or a knife. And he looks at Heidi, like to put her out of her misery so she won't be eaten alive by the Beatles. Man, why is it all? It's not all space movies. It's not all space movies. We've done. This will be the second one with aliens in it. Everything else has been like romantic comedies or dark comedies or yeah. You've been missing a bunch of movies there, I guess, borrowing Orange. Anyway, this is true. I wish I had a revolver or a knife. He looked at Heidi. Suddenly the rasping became a whining shriek. A score of enormous beetles, the advance guards of the army, zoomed out of the darkness into a ray of straggling moonlight. Shrieking, the Aborigines, who had watched the approaching swarm perfectly immobile, threw away the two shells and bolted. "Good Lord!" Dodd shouted. "Did you see the color of their shells, Tommy?" Even in that moment, the scientific observer came uppermost in him. "Those red edges, they must be young ones, Tommy. It's the new brood. No wonder Brahm stayed behind. He was waiting for them to hatch. The new brood. We're doomed. Doomed. All my work wasted." The Aborigines did not get very far. 100 yards from the place where they started to run, they dropped, their bodies hidden beneath the clustering monsters, their screams cut short as those frightful beaks sought their throats and those jaws crunched through flesh and bone. Circling around Dodd, Tommy, and Heidi, as if puzzled by their appearance, the Beatles kept up a continuous, furious droning that sounded like the roar of Niagara mixed with the shrieking of 1,000 sirens. The moon was completely hidden, and only a dim, nebulous light showed the repulsive monsters as they flew within a few feet of the heads of the fugitives. The stench was overpowering. But suddenly a ray of white light shot through the darkness, and with a changed note, just perceptible to the ears of the two men, but doubtless of the greatest significance to the Beatles, the swarm fled apart to right and left, leaving a clear lane, through which appeared Brahm, reclining on his shell couch above his 8 trained Beetle steeds. Hovering overhead, the 8 huge monsters dropped lightly to the ground beside the 3. Brahm sat up, a vicious grin upon his twisted face. In his hand he held a large electric bulb, its sides sheathed in a roughly carved wooden frame. The wire was attached to a battery behind them. "Well met, my friends," he shouted exultantly. "I owe you more thanks than I can express for having so providentially left the electrical equipment of your plane undamaged after you crashed at the entrance to Submundia. I had a hunch about it, and the hunch worked." He grinned more malevolently as he looked from one man to the other. "You've run your race," he said, "but I'm going to have a little fun with you before you die. I'm going to use you as an object lesson. You'll find it out in a little while." Go ahead, Brahm." Dodd grinned back at him. "Just a few million years ago, and you were a speck of protoplasm. In that pre-Pleistocene age, swimming among the invertebrate crustaceans that characterized that epoch." "Invertebrates and monotremes, Dodd," said Brahm almost wistfully. "The mammals were already extinct. The mammals were already existent on the Earth, as you know." Suddenly he broke off as he realized that Dodd was spoofing him. A yell of execration broke from his lips. He uttered a high whistle, and instantly the whip-like lashes of 100 beetles whizzed through the darkness and remained poised over Dodd's head. Not even the marsupial lion, Bram, grinned Dodd, undismayed. Go ahead, but I'll not die with a lie upon my lips. Man, I can tell you what, this author here, he's not good with the dialogue. I gotta say that. Man. Okay. But so far, so good. We're doing okay. I think we've got 2 more chapters to go. And then that'll put us in good time. By the way, for those who, just a quick little note for those who might be new to the stream here. Hello, yeah. I read books 5 days a week, mainly Monday through Thursday. That's the main stream, 10 a.m. Pacific. And then today we have Short Story Sundays, where we're actually, this is a longer one than we normally do. It's actually a novella. Very, very pulpy science fiction. Good stuff, good stuff. And later tonight, we got movie night coming up. Movie night, the Plan 9 from Outer Space. It's gonna be really good, really good. Actually, it would be actually after we watch this, actually, I would recommend people go rent the movie Ed Wood, the Tim Burton film, which is it's like based on the life of Ed Wood, the director of Plan 9 from Outer Space. But yeah, it's just it's such a good movie, such a good movie. Yeah, we can talk about that a bit later though. So let's get on to it. Let's get back to our story. You've already seen that? Yeah. It's such a good movie. The Trail of Death. There's sure some sort of hoodoo on these Antarctic expeditions, Wilson, said the city editor of the Daily Record to the Star Rewrite Man. He glanced through the hastily typed report that had come through on the wireless set erected on the 36th story of the Record building. Tommy Travers gone, eh? And James Dodd, too. There'll be woe and wailing along the Great White Way tonight when the news gets out. They say that half the chorus girls in town consider themselves engaged to Tommy. Nice fellow, too. Always did like him. Queer that curtain of fog that seems to lie on the actual site of the South Pole, he continued, glancing over the report again. The storm thinks that Tommy's crashed in it, and that it's 1,000,000 to 1 against their ever finding his remains. What's this about beetles? Shells of enormous prehistoric beetles found by Tommy and Todd. That'll make good copy, Wilson. Let's play that up. Hand it to Jones and tell him to scare up a catching headline or 2. He beckoned to the boy who was hurrying toward his desk, a flimsy in his hand, glanced through it and tossed it toward Wilson. What do they think this is, April Fool's Day? He asked. I'm surprised that the international press should fall for such stuff as this. Why, tomorrow is the 1st of April, exclaimed Wilson, tossing back the cable dispatch with a contemptuous laugh. Well, it won't do the IP much good to play those tricks on their subscribers, said the city editor testily. I'm surprised, to say the least. I guess their Adelaide correspondent has gone off his head or something, using poor Travers' name, too. Of course, the fellow didn't know he was dead, but still. And that was how the Daily Record missed being the first to give out certain information that was to stagger the world. The dispatch, which had evidently outrun an earlier one, was as follows. I should do a choose-your-own-adventure story where we vote. We do better than that. We do choose-your-own-adventure stuff where you have control for like 15 minutes at a time. Adelaide, South Australia, March 31st. Further telegraphic communications arriving almost continuously from Settlers Station, signed by Thomas Travers, members of Travers' Antarctic Expedition, who claims to have penetrated Earth's interior at South Pole and to have come out near Victoria Desert. Travers states that swarm of prehistoric beetles, estimated at 2 trillion and as large as men, with shells impenetrable by rifle bullets, now besieging Settlers Station, where he and Dodd and Heidi, woman of subterranean race whom they brought away, are shut up in telegraph office. Brahm, former member of Greystoke Expedition, said to be in charge of swarm, with intention of obliterating human race. Every living thing at Settlers Station destroyed, and swarm moving south. It was a small-town paper, 100 miles from New York, that took a chance on publishing this report from the international press, in spite of frantic efforts on the parts of the head office to recall it after it had been transmitted. This paper published the account as an April Fool's Day joke, although later it took itself the credit for having believed it. But by the time April Fool's Day dawned, all the world knew that the account was, if anything, an underestimate of the fearful things that were happening down under. It was known now that the swarm of monsters had originated in the Great Victoria Desert, one of the worst stretches of desolation in the world, situated in the southeast corner of Western Australia. Their numbers were incalculable. Wimbush, the aviator, who was attempting to cross the continent from east to west, reported afterward that he had flown for 4 days, skirting the edge of the swarm, and that the whole of that time they were moving in the same direction, a thick cloud that left a trail of dense darkness on earth beneath them, like the path of an eclipse. Wimbush escaped them only because he had a ceiling of 20,000 feet, to which apparently the Beatles could not soar. And this swarm was only about 1/4 of the whole number of the monsters. This was the swarm that was moving westward and subsequently totally destroyed all living things in Kalgoorlie, Coolgardie, Perth, and all the coastal cities of Western Australia. Lander Gardenier has to go. Okay, you have a great night there. We'll catch up with you later, Lander Gardenier. Have a great night. It's up there, Wink, maybe. Winko. How you doing? Thank you for the follow. Yeah. Ships were found drifting in the Indian Ocean, totally destitute of crews and passengers. Not even their skeletons were found, and it was estimated that the voracious monsters had carried them away bodily, devoured them in the air, and dropped the remains into the water. All the world knows how the sea elephant herd on Kerguelen Island was totally destroyed, and of the giant shells that were found lying elsewhere on the deserted beaches, in positions that showed the monsters had in the end devoured one another. Mauritius was the most westerly point reached by a fraction of the swarm. A little over 20,000 of the Beatles reached that lovely island, by the count of shells afterward, and all the world knows of the now desperate and successful fight that the inhabitants waged against them. Men and women, boys and girls, black and white, finding that the devils were invulnerable against rifle fire, sallied forth boldly with knives and choppers, and laid down a life for a life. Man, this is some grim page on humanity right here. On the second day after their appearance, the main swarm, 1.5 trillion strong, reached the line of the Transcontinental Railway and moved eastward into South Australia, traveling, it was estimated, at the rate of 200 miles an hour. Good Lord. By the next morning they were in Adelaide, a city of nearly 250,000 people. By nightfall, every living thing in Adelaide and the suburbs had been eaten, except for a few who had succeeded in hiding in walled-up cellars or in the surrounding marshes. That night the swarm was on the borders of New South Wales and Victoria, and moving in 2 divisions toward Melbourne and Sydney. The northern half, it was quickly seen, was flying wild, with no particular objective, moving in a solid cohort 200 miles in length, and devouring game, stock, and humans indiscriminately. It was the southern division, numbering perhaps 1 trillion, that was under command of Brahm, and aimed at destroying Melbourne, as Adelaide had been destroyed. You hadn't expecting what? The world to be taken over by Beatles? No one saw it coming. Brahm, with his 8 beetle steeds, was by this time known and execrated throughout the world. He was pictured as Antichrist, and the fulfillment of the prophecies of the Rock of Revelations. And all this while, or rather, until the telegraph wires were cut, broken, it was discovered later by perching beetles, Thomas Travers was sending out messages from his post at Settlers Station. Soon it was known that prodigious creatures were following in the wake of the devastating horde. Mantises, 15 feet in height, winged things like pterodactyls, longer than bombing airplanes, followed, preying on the stragglers. But the main bodies never halted, and the inroads that the destroyers made on their numbers were insignificant. Before the swarm reached Adelaide, the Commonwealth government had taken action. Troops had been called out, and all the available airplanes in the country had been ordered to assemble at Broken Hill, New South Wales, a strategic point commanding the approaches to Sydney and Melbourne. Something like 400 airplanes were assembled, with several batteries of anti-aircraft guns that had been used in the Great War. Every amateur aviator in Australia was on the spot, with machines ranging from tiny moths to Handley Pages. Anything that could fly. This got me thinking. It's got me thinking of that movie Them, that 1950s black and white movie about the giant ants that come on in. Wiki Them movie. Is that in the public domain? It'd be cool if it was. Them. Blah 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 blah. It's the first big bug picture, right? Oh, Leonard Nimoy's got a small part in it. Is them in the public? I was just looking up something real fast. Oh, they'd be so excited if it was. Them movie. List of films in the public domain. I don't know. I'll look it up later. That's a very fun movie though. We need a lot of bug spray. Yeah, a lot of bug spray. You thought it would be stopped by clearing by daring do. Okay. A little bit of daring do by these chaps would have taken care of business. Yeah, well, you would think so. You know, I think maybe earlier in it they were like, well, when the Beatles come out into the sunlight, they'll just magically disappear. Yeah, got a handful of Beatles, they'll just go away. There'll be none in a few days. And yeah, but yeah, and now the entire world is being decimated by these Beatles. All right. Alrighty. I think Tommy Travers was like, these Beatles, they'll just magically go away. But no. Alright. Nocturnal though the Beatles had been, they no longer feared the light of the sun. In fact, it was ascertained later that they were blind. An opacity had formed over the crystalline lens of the eye. Blind, they were no less formidable than with their sight. They existed only to devour, and their numbers made them irresistible, no matter which way they turned. As soon as the vanguard of the dark cloud was sighted from Broken Hill, the airplanes went aloft. 400 planes, each armed with machine guns, dashed into the serried hosts, drumming out volleys of lead. In a long line, extending nearly to the limits of the Beetle formation, thus giving each aviator all the room he needed, the planes gave battle. What does serried mean? Serried. Rows of people or things standing close together. It's like serried ranks of soldiers. Okay, so the opposite of what everyone's supposed to be doing today. Serried. Press close. All right. Interesting. Yeah, woo. Missed that gif. Oh no, the Beetlejuice. Okay, nice. Thank goodness for delay on Mixer. I can catch it on my tablet. Nice. Okay. The first terror that fell upon the airmen was the discovery that, even at close range, the machine gun bullets failed to penetrate the shells. The force of the impact whirled the Beetles around, drove them together in bunches, sent them groping with weaving tentacles through the air. But that was all. On the main body of the invaders, no impression was made, whatever. Nakastrafat says you don't believe them as in the public domain. Yeah, I took a quick look and it didn't pop up immediately, so, but yeah, I don't think it is. I don't know. It'd be nice if it was. It's a great movie. The second terror was the realization that the swarm, driven down here and there from an altitude of several hundred feet, merely resumed their progress on the ground in a succession of gigantic leaps. Within a few minutes, instead of presenting an inflexible barrier, the line of airplanes was badly broken, each plane surrounded by swarms of the monsters. Then Brahm was seen. And that was the third terror, the sight of the famous Beetle steeds, 4 pairs abreast, with Brahm reclining like a Roman emperor upon the surface of the shells. It is true, Brahm had no inclination to risk his own life in battle. At the first sight of the aviators, he dodged into the thick of the swarm, where no bullet could reach him. Brahm managed to transmit an order, and the Beatles drew together. Some thought afterward that it was by thought transference he effected this maneuver, for instantly the Beatles, which had hitherto flown in loose order, became a solid wall, 1,000 feet in height, closing in on the planes. The propellers struck them and snapped short, and as the planes went weaving down, the hideous monsters leaped into the cockpits and began their abominable meal. Not a single plane came back. Planes and skeletons, and here and there a shell of a dead beetle, itself completely devoured, were all that was found afterward. The gunners stayed at their posts till the last moment, firing round after round of shell and shrapnel, with insignificant results. Their skeletons were found not 20 paces from their guns, where the gunners' monument now stands. Half an hour after the flight had first been sighted, the news was being radioed to Sydney, Melbourne, and all other Australian cities, advising instant flight to sea as the only chance of safety. That radio message was cut short, and men listened and shuddered. After that came the crowding, all aboard. Oh, Skip says, this reminds you of another book called Planet Death or Deadly Planet. Yes, we've actually read that. That's by Frank Herbert, Death World, the Death World books. Hey there, Ian, what's going on, my man? See you over on Twitch. How you doing? Yeah, we're restreaming to Twitch right now. Our main stream is over here on Mixer, but yeah, restreaming our book club stuff for the time being. How you doing? Yeah, so Skip, I think you're talking about Death World by Frank Herbert. We've actually read those. The first 2 books are in the public domain. They fell into the public domain, actually. We read them last year for a book club. Yeah, Death World 1 and 2, and maybe number 3. I don't know. I don't recall. Yeah, but Frank Herbert, yeah, he wrote a lot of like real good. I mean, like obviously he's mostly well known for Dune, which is just amazing world building. But yeah, he wrote a bunch of like trashy, pulpy stuff as well, which is really good. Yeah, Death World with what's the name of the hero? I forget his name. He was the gambler on the run. He was always on the lam. Not Slippery Jim DeGritz. That's a stainless steel rat. I forget his name. The dude from Death World. He had some funky like name as well. Yeah. Oh yeah, they're a lot of fun, but they're not great. They're not great. That's for sure. All right. Okay. Let's get on with our story. Okay. Okay. That radio message was cut short, and men listened and shuddered. After that came the crowding aboard all craft in the harbours, the tragedies of the Eustace, the All Australia, the Zephyrus, sunk at their moorings. The innumerable sea tragedies, the horde of fugitives that landed in New Zealand, the reign of terror when the mob got out of hand, the burning of Melbourne, the sack of Sydney. And south and eastward, like a resistless flood, the beetle swarm came back pouring. Well, Brahm had boasted that he would make the earth a desert. Yeah, the stainless steel rats were really, they were those by Harry Harrison. Yeah, but they were really good up until he started, he took a long break from them, like 20-30 year break from them, and then in the 90s he started co-writing them, like a whole new set of them. And some of them were okay, and then it just got real stupid. But then he did all these sequels to like Build the Galactic Hero. That first Build the Galactic Hero, a brilliant book, such good satire. And then he just like co-wrote a whole bunch of like sequels to it, which were awful. Yeah. Anyway, a delay test, says Landordner. Ian's doing really well. Oh, well, that's good to hear. Yeah, we're doing pretty good. We're doing pretty good. We're probably got only another half hour of book club to go. I think we'll finish our book in time. And then later tonight, over on Mixer, on our mainstream, we have movie night. We're doing Plan 9 from Outer Space tonight, so it's going to be fun. Anyway, nice to meet you, Ian. Yeah. We've got to continue with our book. 100 miles of poisoned carcasses of sheep, extended outside Sydney's suburbs, gave the first promise of success. Long mounds of beetle shells testified to the results. Moreover, the beetles that fed on the carcasses of their fellows were in turn poisoned and died. But this was only a drop in the bucket. What counted was that the swift advance was slowing down. As if exhausted by their efforts, or else satiated with food, the beetles were doing what the soldiers did. They were digging in. 24 miles from Sydney, 18 outside Melbourne, the advance was stayed. Volunteers who went out from those cities reported that the beetles seemed to be resting in long trenches that they had excavated, so that only their shells appeared above the ground. Trees were covered with clinging beetles. Every wall, every house was invisible beneath the beetle armor. Australia had a respite. Perhaps only for a night or day, but still time to draw breath, time to consider, time for the shiploads of fugitives to get farther from the continent that had become a shambles. And then the cry went up, not only from Australia, but from all the world. Get Travers! Wow, okay, so yeah, that was a huge change of pace that's going on with this book. It's gone from just a handful of people trying to escape from the hollow earth, and now is the full the big beetle invasion. It escalated really quick. That were okay. I think Mrs. Shadow's a bit of a Beatles fan. Nice. Land Gardener is a 13-second delay from YouTube to Mixer. Okay, that's interesting. The DDT was saved. Oh, DDT, you're talking about, that's the pesticide. Okay, yeah. Okay, chapter 10. I believe this is the last chapter. In case anyone's wondering what we're reading, this is from the pages of Astounding Stories of Super Science magazine. Yeah, all of them pretty much fell into the public domain. So they were from the 30s through the 40s, I think. I have to go back and check how long the magazine was out for. Anyway, all in the public domain, and just a lot of good reading. A lot of good reading in there. Science fiction, fantasy, horror. Chapter 10. At Bay. Bram put his fingers to his mouth and whistled. A shrill whistle, yet audible to Dodd, Tommy, and Heidi. Instantly, 3 pairs of beetles appeared out of the throng. Their tentacles went out, and the two...
Shadowtronics sent 100 embers with the message crown.
Wow, thank you very much, Shadowtronics. You are being very, very generous, maybe over-generous with those embers there. Yeah, well, thank you very much. It's very kind. No message in that one. I'm assuming he's still very much in love with Mrs. Shadowtronics, and it's so obvious that he didn't need to put it down again, because everyone knows. That's what I'm assuming. That's what the message should have been in there. There we go. And Chris Alberti's all excited about that too. Yeah. Oh, there's Bill Nye. Yeah, Bill Nye. He's a cool cat. There we go. Let's okay. Instantly, 3 pairs of beetles appeared out of the throng. Their tentacles went out, and the 2 men and the girl found themselves hoisted separately upon the backs of the pairs. Next moment they were flying side by side, high in the air, above the surrounding swarm. They could see one another, but it was impossible for them to make their voices heard above the rasping of the beetles' legs. Hours went by, while the moon crossed the sky and dipped toward the horizon. Tommy knew that the moon would set about the hour of dawn. and the stars were already beginning to pale when he saw a line of telegraph poles, then 2 lines of shining metals, then a small settlement of some stone and brick houses. Tommy was not familiar with the geography of Australia, but he knew this must be the transcontinental line. Whirling onward, the cloud of beetles suddenly swooped downward. For a moment, Tommy could see the frightened occupants of the settlement crowding into the single street. Then he shuddered with sick horror as he saw them obliterated by the swarm. There was no struggle, no attempt at flight or resistance. One moment those 40-odd men were there. The next minute, they existed no longer. There was nothing but a swarm of beetles, walking about like men with shells upon their backs. And now Tommy saw evidences of Brahm's devilish control of the swarm. For out of the cloud dropped what seemed to be a phalanx of beetle guards, the military police of beetledom, and lashing fiercely with their tentacles, they drove back all the swarm that sought to join their companions in their ghoulish feast. There was just so much food, and no more. The rest must seek theirs further. But even beetles, it may be presumed, are not entirely under discipline at all times. The pair of beetles that bore Tommy suddenly swooped apart, 10 or a dozen feet from the ground, and dashed into the thick of the struggling, frenzied mass, flinging their rider to earth. Tommy struck the soft sand, sat up, half-dazed, saw his shell lying a few feet away from him, and retrieved it just as a couple of the monsters came swooping down at him. He looked about him. Not far away stood Dodd and Heidi, with their shells on their backs. They recognized Tommy and ran toward him. Not more than 20 yards away stood the railroad station, with several crates of goods on the platform. Next to it was a substantial house of stone, with the front door open. Hey there, Joey. How you doing, man? How's the weekend stream going? How's the missus? Yeah. Tillable Cat's here as well. Tillable Cat throwing down more Beatles gifts. Yes, hello, Tillable Cat. Good morning. Tommy pointed to it, and Dodd understood. Oh, hang on. Lost my place. Not more than 20 yards away stood the railroad station, with several crates of goods on the platform. Next to it was a substantial house of stone, with the front door open. Tommy pointed to it, and Dodd understood and shouted something that was lost in the furious buzz of the beetles' wings as they devoured their prey. The 3 raced for the entrance, gained it unmolested, and closed the door. There was a key in the door, and it was light enough for them to see a chain, which Dodd pulled into position. There was only 1 story, and there were 3 rooms, apparently, with the kitchen. Tommy rushed to the kitchen door, locked it, and with almost superhuman efforts dragged the large iron stove against it. He rushed to the window, but it was a mere loophole, not large enough to admit a child. Nevertheless, he stood the heavy table on end so that it covered it. Then he ran back. Dodd had already barricaded the window of the larger room, which was a bed-sitting room, with a heavy wardrobe. Is that our friend Ian from Twitch? Ah, it is. You switched over to me. Okay, nice. Okay, cool. That's very cool. Yeah, I restream my book club stuff over to Twitch and Periscope and YouTube, just because everyone's working at home right now and people need distraction. But yeah, we have gaming streams and a bunch of stuff happening here on Mixer. This is our main place here. Anyway, nice to meet you, Ian. And Mr. Ovies. How do you say that? Ovies? Good morning. Good morning. Very cool. Dodd had already barricaded the window of the larger room, which was a bed-sitting room with a heavy wardrobe and the wooden bed How's that? Yeah, boy. Yeah, boy. Okay. Somehow, but yeah, I don't even know how I did that. I guess I don't know. The cable fell out. Okay, how far back do I got to go? I don't know. Let's back up. Yeah, that was weird. It was very weird. Okay, let's back up a little bit here. Okay. Okay, so they got the big safe against the wall. Just back up a page. There we go. Yeah, so the three of them are holed up in the stone house, and they're shoving stoves and safes against the wall to stop Beatles coming in. Good, said Heidi. That will hold them. The two men looked at her doubtfully. Did Heidi know what she was talking about? The sun had risen. A long shaft shot into the room. Outside, the Beatles were still buzzing as they turned over the vestiges of their prey. There were as yet no signs of attack. Suddenly, Tommy grasped Dodd's arm. Look, he shouted, pointing to a corner which had been in a gloom a moment before. There was a table there, and on it a telegraphic instrument. Telegraphy had been one of Tommy's hobbies in boyhood. In a moment he was busy at the table. Dot, dash, dot, dash. Then suddenly, outside, a furious hum, and the impact of beetle bodies against the front door. Tommy got up, grinning. That was the first interrupted message from Tommy that was received. Through the barred window, the three could see the furious efforts of the Beatles to force an entrance. But the very tensile strength of the beetle shells, which rendered them impervious to bullets, required a laminate construction which rendered them powerless against brick or stone. Desperately, the swarm dashed itself against the walls until the ground outside was piled high with stunned beetles. Not the faintest impression was made on the defenses. "Watch them, Jim." Watch them, Jim," said Tom. "I'll go see if the rear is secure." That thought of his seemed to have been anticipated by the Beatles, for as Tommy reached the kitchen, the swarm came dashing against door and window, always recoiling. Tommy came back, grinning all over his face. You were right, Heidi," he said. "We've held them all right, and the tables are turned on Bram. And I got a message through, I think," he added to Dodd. Dash, dot, from the instrument. Tommy ran to the table again. Dash, dot, went back. For 5 minutes Tommy labored, while the Beatles hammered now on one door, now on another, now on the windows. Then Tommy got up. "It was some station down the line," he said. "I've told them, and they're sending a man up here to replace the telegraphist, also a couple of cops. They think I'm crazy. I told them again. That's the best I could do." Who's this? This is... Okay. "Dodd, Travers, for the last time, let's talk." The cloud of Beatles seemed to have thinned. Good Lord. Yeah, that was a little bit of murder. Good Lord. Squeaking those out. Good gracious. Okay. "Dodd, Travers, for the last time, let's talk." The cloud of Beatles seemed to have thinned, for the sun was shining into the room. Brahm's voice was perfectly audible, though he himself was invisible. Probably he thought it was likely that the defenders had obtained firearms. "I said it that way, Shadow. Nothing to say to you, Brahm," called Dodd. Yeah. I changed it to subscriber. I'm gonna say just because I wanted to give them access to mass bombs, but everything, but it's all mass. So we'll see how it works out. "Nothing to say to you, Brahm," called Dodd. "We've finished our discussion on the monotremes." "I want you fellows to stand in with me," came Brahm's plaintive tones. "It's so lonesome all by oneself, Dodd." "Ah, you're beginning to find that out, are you?" Dodd could not resist answering. "You'll be lonelier yet before you're through." "Dodd, I didn't want to bring that swarm up here. I swear it. I've been trying to control them from the beginning. I saw what was coming. I believe I can avert this horror, drive them into the sea, or something like that. Don't make me desperate, Dodd." And listen, old man, about those monotremes. Sensible men don't quarrel over things like that. Oh. No, I think that was him continuing. And listen, old man, about those monotremes. Sensible men don't quarrel over things like that. Why can't we agree to differ? Ah, now you're talking, Brahm, Dodd answered. Only you're too late. After what happened here today, we have no truck with you. That's final. Damn you, shrieked Brahm. I'll batter down this house. You'll do nothing, Brahm, because you can't, Dodd answered. Travers has wired full information about your devil horde, and likewise about you, and all Australia will be prepared to give you a warm reception when you arrive. I tell you, I'm invincible, Brahm screamed. In 3 days, Australia will be a ruin, a depopulated desert. In a week, all South Asia. In 3 weeks, Europe. In 2 months, America. You've been taking too many of those pellets, Brahm, Dodd answered. Stand back now. Stand back wherever you are, or I'll open the door and throw the slops over you. I guess their chamber pot is filling up inside. All right. There we go. Oh, you can bomb yourself in that? I didn't know you could bomb yourself. All right. Brahm's screech rose high above the droning of the wings. In another moment, the interior of the room had grown as black as night. The rattle of the beetle shells against the 4 walls of the house was like the clattering of stage thunder. All through the darkness, Dodd could hear the unhurried clicking of the key. At last, the rattling ceased. The sun shone in again. The ground all around the house was packed with fallen beetles, 6 feet high, a writhing mass that creaked and clattered as it strove to disengage itself. Brahm's voice once more. I'm leaving a guard, Dodd. They'll get you if you try to leave, but they won't eat you. I'm going to have you 3 sliced into little pieces, the 1,000 deaths of the Chinese. The beetles will eat the parts that are sliced away, and you'll live to watch them. I'll be back with a stick or 2 of dynamite tomorrow. Yeah, but listen, Brahm, Dodd sang out. Listen, you old marsupial tiger. When these pipe dreams clear away, I'm going to build a gallows of beetle shells reaching to the moon to hang you on. Brahm's screech of madness died away. The strident rasping of the beetle's legs began again. For hours the 3 heard it. It was not until nightfall that it died away. What's up there, Mere Pie? What's going on? Hey, Mr. Galen's here. What's up? How y'all doing? Yeah. Still working on that Final Fantasy VII. Good gracious. That is, people putting their time in with that one. And you're going to 100% it, too. Let's see, where are we at? Okay, here we are. I lost my place for a second. It's a lovely game, he says. Brahm had made good his threat, for all around the house, extending as far as they could see, was the host of beetle guards. To venture out, even with their shells about them, was clearly a hazardous undertaking. There was neither food nor water in the place. We'll just have to hold out, said Dodd, breaking one of the long periods of silence. Tommy did not answer. He did not hear him, for he was busy at the key. Suddenly he leaped to his feet. God, Jimmy, he cried, that devil's making good his threat. The swarms in South Australia, destroying every living thing, wiping out whole towns and villages, and they believe me now. He sank into a chair. For the first time, the strain of the awful past seemed to grip him. Heidi came to his side. The Beatles are finished, she said in her soft voice. How do you know, Heidi? Demanded Dodd. The Beatles are finished, Heidi repeated quietly, and that was all that Dodd could get out of her. But again the key began to click, and Tommy staggered to the table. Dot, dash, dash, dot. Presently he looked up once more. The swarm's halfway to Adelaide, he said. They want to know if I can help them. Help them! He burst into hysterical laughter. Toward evening he came back after an hour at the key. Line must be broken, he said. I'm getting nothing. In the moonlight, they could see the huge compound eyes of the Beetle guards glittering like enormous diamonds outside. They had not been conscious of thirst during the day, but now, with the coming of the cool night, their desire for water became paramount. Tommy, there must be water in the station, said Dodd. I'm going to get a pitcher from the kitchen and risk it, Tommy. Take care of Heidi if... he added. But Heidi laid her hand upon his arm. Do not go, Jimmy Dodd, she said. We can be thirsty tonight, and tomorrow the Beatles will be finished. How do you know? Asked Dodd again, but now he realized that Heidi had never learned the significance of an interrogation. She only repeated her statement, and again the two men had to remain content. The long night passed. Outside, the many facets of the Beatles' eyes. Inside, the two men, desperate with anxiety, not for themselves, but for the fate of the world, snatching a few moments' sleep from time to time, then looking up to see those glaring eyes from the silent watchers. Hey there, Dr. Eye Hacker. Good morning. But there was immense activity among the Beatles. They were scurrying to and fro, and as they watched, Dodd and Tommy began to see some significance in their movements. Why, they're digging trenches, Tommy shouted. That's horrible, Jimmy. Are they intending to conduct sapping operations against us like engineers, or what? Dodd did not reply, and Tommy hardly expected any answer. As the two men, now joined by Heidi, watched, they saw that the Beatles were actually digging themselves into the sand. Dr. Eyehack is doing well and just setting in from work. Oh, being all essential and all. Man. Dr. Eyehacker is now a partner streamer? What? When did that happen? I was not aware. Very nice, very nice. There we go. Oh yeah, I'm not up to date. They post a list of new streamers periodically in the super secret. There's another super secret Discord place. But I did not see that one. Anyway, congratulations. There we go. You're now one of the star-bellied sneeches here. Very nice. Very cool. Okay, alrighty. A whole new world opens up. Well, not really. It's all good. Okay, let us get on with... What? Alright, we need a mass bomb to clear the air after that one. The best we can do to lighting a match, I think. Within the space of an hour, by the time the first shafts of sunlight began to stream into the room, there was to be seen only the massive, rounded shells of the monsters as they squatted in the sand. "Now you may fetch water," said Heidi, smiling at her lover. "No, you do not need the shells," she added. "The Beatles are finished. It is as the wise men of my people told me." Wondering, hesitating, Tommy and Dodd unlocked the front door. They stood upon the threshold, ready to bolt back again, but there was no stirring among the Beetle hosts. Growing bolder, they advanced a few steps, then, shamed by Heidi's courage, they followed her, still cautiously, to the station. Dodd shouted as he saw a water tank and a receptacle above it with a watercock. They let Heidi a drink, then followed suit, and for a few moments, as they appeased their thirst, the Beatles were forgotten. Then they turned back. There had been no movement in that line of shells that glinted in the morning sunlight. "Come, I shall show you," said Heidi confidently, advancing toward the trench. Dodd would have stopped her, but the girl moved forward quickly, eluded him with a graceful, mirthful gesture, and stooped down over the trench. She rose up, raising in her arms an empty beetle shell. Dodd, who had reached the trench before Tommy, turned round and yelled to him excitedly. Tommy ran forward, and then he understood. The shells were empty. The swarm, whose life cycle Brahm had admitted he did not understand, had just molted. It had molted because the bodies, gorged with food, had grown too large for the shells. In time, if left alone, the monsters would grow larger shells, become invincible again, but just now they were defenseless as newborn babes, and knew it. Deep underneath the empty shells they had burrowed into the ground. Everywhere at the bottom of the deep trenches were the naked, bestial creatures, waving helpless tentacles and squirming over one another as they strove to find shelter and security. A sudden madness came over Tommy and Dodd. "Dynamite! There must be dynamite!" Dodd shouted as he ran back to the station. "Something better than dynamite," shouted Tommy, holding up one of a score of drums of petrol. Chapter 11. The World Set Free. Tell you what, it's been crazy chaos. Everything escalated so fast in this. So fast. Okay, I believe this is the final chapter. Oh, which will bring us to the top of the hour. Very nice. Perfect timing by the Carrington. Perfect timing. All right, Chapter 11. The World Set Free. They waited 2 days at Settlers Station. To push along the line into the desert would have been useless, and both men were convinced that an airplane would arrive for them. But it was not until the second afternoon that the aviator arrived, half dead with thirst and fatigue, and almost incoherent. His was the last plane on the Australian continent. He brought the news of the destruction of Adelaide, and of the siege of Melbourne and Sydney, as he termed it. He told Dodd and Tommy that the two cities had been surrounded with trenches and barbed wire. Machine guns and artillery were bombarding the trenches in which the Beatles had taken shelter. "Has anyone been out on reconnaissance?" asked Tommy. Nobody had been permitted to pass through the barbed wire, though there had been volunteers. It meant certain death. But unless the Beatles were sapping deep in the ground, what their purpose was, nobody knew. Tommy and Dodd led him to the piles of smoking, stinking debris and told him. That was where the aviator fainted from sheer relief. Who's this? Led him. Okay. The Commonwealth wants you to take supreme command against the Beatles, he told Tommy when he had recovered. I'm to bring you back. Not that they expect me back, but God, what a piece of news. Forgive my swearing, I used to be a parson. Still am, for the fact of that. How are you going to bring us three back in your plane? Asked Tommy. I shall stay here with Jimmy, Dodd, said Heidi suavely. There is not the least danger any more. You must destroy the Beatles before their shells have grown again, that's all. Used to be a parson, you say. Still are, shouted Dodd excitedly. Thank God. I mean, I'm glad to hear it. Come inside and come quick. I want you too, Tommy. Then Tommy understood. And it seemed as if Heidi understood, by some instinct that belongs exclusively to women, for her cheeks were flushed as she turned and smiled into Dodd's eyes. 10 minutes later, Tommy hopped into the biplane, leaving the happy married couple at Settlers Station. His eyes grew misty as the plane took the air, and he saw them waving to him from the ground. Dodd and Heidi and he had been through so many adventures and had reached safety. He must not fail. Just as a little aside there, I mean, why would you rush into like some kind of shotgun marriage with the first parson that you find? Because the girl doesn't even understand the concept of marriage. I mean, they literally found her a few days before. Down, among the almost Neanderthal cave people living in the Hollow Earth. They haven't had anything to do with humanity for like thousands of years. It's like what would that even mean to someone? I don't know. I don't know. All right, it's I don't know. I mean, she I mean, not having. I mean, because marriage is I mean. Yeah, if you have never been exposed to the concept of that before, I mean, Yeah, I know it's just weird. It's just weird. It's a very sloppy writer. That is fun. Because she'll wind his watch. Actually, that was from the book. Yeah, they talked about. Yeah, he was going to. He was going to get her to wind his watch every day. She could do that. Good Lord. All right. Yeah. I forgot about that. Nice callback. Okay. He did not fail. He found himself at Sydney in command of 30,000 men, all enthusiastic for the fight for the human race. Soldiers and volunteers ready to fight until they dropped. When the news of the situation was made public, an immense wave of hope ran through the world. National differences were forgotten. Color and creed and race grew more tolerant of one another. A new day had dawned. The day of humanity's true liberation. This is where they get the speech from Independence Day, maybe. No, yeah, but the girl's a cave woman, like essentially. Yeah, totally. This is the first time like being above ground. Even if she doesn't understand, it's against the religion for prayer. So for him, it might be essential. There's yeah, it's I don't know. It's just weird. It just gets glossed over so easily here. It just seems like a very weird thing to me, at least. I don't know. Tommy's first act was to call out the fire companies and have the Beatles' trenches saturated with petrol from the fire hoses. Then incendiary bullets, shot from guns at a safe distance, quickly converted them into blazing infernos. But even so, only a tithe of the Beetle army had been destroyed. 200 planes had already been rushed from New Zealand, and their aviators went up and scoured the country far and wide. Everywhere they found trenches, and where the soil was stony, millions of the Beatles clustered hopelessly beneath great mounds of discarded shells. An army of black trackers, aboriginal trackers, had been brought in planes from all parts of the country, and they searched out the Beetle masses everywhere along the course that the invaders had taken. Then incendiary bombs were dropped from above. Day after day, the Beetle massacre went on. By the end of a week, the survivors of the invasion began to take heart again. It was certain that the greater portion of the horde had been destroyed. There was only one thing lacking. No trace of Brahm had been seen since his appearance at the head of his Beetle army in front of Broken Hill, and louder and more insistent grew the world clamor that he should be found and put to death in some way more horrible than any yet devised. The ingenuity of 1,000,000 minds worked upon this problem. Newspapers all over the world offered prizes for the most suitable form of death. Ingenious oriental torches were rediscovered. Good Lord. The only thing lacking was Brahm. A spy craze ran through Australia. 500 Brahms were found, and all of them were in imminent danger of death before they were able to prove an alias. And oddly enough, it was Tommy and Dodd who found Brahm, for Dodd had been brought back east together with his bride and given an important command in the Army of Extermination. Dodd had joined Tommy not far from Broken Hill, where a swarm of 100,000 beetles had been found in a little-known valley. The monsters had begun to grow new shells, and the news had excited a fresh wave of apprehension. The airplanes had concentrated for an attack upon them, and Tommy and Dodd were riding together, Tommy at the controls and Dodd observing. Dodd called through the tube to Tommy and indicated a mass that was moving through the scrub, some 50,000 beetles, executing short hops and evidently regaining some vitality. Tommy nodded. He signaled, and the fleet of planes circled around and began to drop their incendiary bombs. Within a few minutes, the beetles were ringed with a wall of fire. Presently, the whole terrain was a blazing furnace. Hours later, when the fires had died away, Tommy and Dodd went down to look at the destruction that had been wrought. The scene was horrible. Great masses of charred flesh and shell were piled up everywhere. "I guess that's been a pretty thorough job," said Tommy. "Let's get back, Jim." "What's that?" cried Dodd, pointing. Then, "My God, Tommy, it's one of our men!" It was a man, but it was not one of their men, that creeping, maimed, half-cinder and half-human thing that was trying to crawl into the hollow of a rock. It was Brahm, and recognition was mutual. Brahm dropping, moaning. He was only the shell of a man, and it was incredible how he had managed to survive that ordeal of fire. The remainder of his life, which only his indomitable will had held in that shattered body, was evidently a matter of minutes. But he looked up at Dodd and laughed. "So, you're here, damn you," he snarled. "And you think you've won? I've another card, another invasion of the world, beside which this is child's play. It's an invasion." Brahm was going, but he pulled himself together with a supreme effort. "Invasion by new species of monotremes," he croaked, "deep down in earth, was saving to prove you the liar you are. Monotremes, egg-laying platypus, big as an elephant, existent long before Pleistocene epoch. Make you recant, you lying fool." Brahm died, an outburst of bitter laughter on his lips. Dodd stood silent for a while, then reverently he removed his hat. He was a madman and a devil, but he had the potentialities of a god, Tommy, he said. And that, yeah, wow, okay. That was a epic story in the making right there. Oh, boom, good lord. Man. Very good. Okay, catching up on chat. Okay, she's literally she's only known these two dudes like for days. So I mean, yeah, I mean it's such a, I mean, well actually no, she's known them. They were underground for a couple of months actually altogether. They managed to teach her English. Even so, it's just a really bizarre concept. Like the whole. It's like huge gulfs in culture. Huge gulfs in culture. Anyway, that was The Beetle Horde by Victor Rousseau. Not the greatest thing that we've read. It was good pulpy sci-fi though. Very good pulpy sci-fi. Yeah, I liked that one a lot. That was really good. Okay, let me scroll down. Okay. Okay, so Chris Alberti liked it. Okay, well, that was good. Yeah, it was good. It took us, It took us actually 3 weekends to get through that one, actually. Yeah, so we generally don't do things that are that long. Yeah, so they have a giant elephant-sized platypus going to be coming at them next. It definitely reads like a to be continued type of deal. Definitely read something like that. Alrighty. So let's, we could end with a, what are we going to end with? We could end with a short story. The platypus strikes back. Yeah, let's. We're going to end with a little piece by Lord Dunsany. Just a quiet little thing to wind the day down with. Yeah, so it's 4 o'clock right now. Yeah, so we're gonna read one little short story, just to end the day. It's like 6 pages, something like that. Then I'm gonna have to end the stream, and we'll be back at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern with movie night. Tonight we're watching Plan 9 from Outer Space. That's gonna be awesome. It's gonna be awesome. Platypuses are weird, but yeah, they are cute. But from what I understand, they have poison spines on them. Okay, Mr. Bat Games is out of here. Okay, well, we got one more story here before we go. One more before we go. This is just a little bit of weird Lord Dunsany, a little bit of weird Lord Dunsany action. Buzz, 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 buzz. Oh, Lander Gardener is back. All right, just in time for a tiny little short story. Here we go. This will be 10 minutes, and then we're going to end our stream. I've got to take a break, take care of a few things, get ready for movie night, and I believe Neverwinter after that. Yeah. Let's do it. Let's read a little something. It's very cool. And so, yeah, so we met a new friend over on Twitch who's just joined us over here on Mixer. Very nice. That was Mr. Ian. Mr. Ian's popped on over here. Very cool. That's nice. Hello now. Hello. Okay. Oh, more notifications on Twitter. Good Lord. A lot of them. That is... Oh, okay. That's Halo. Okay. Yeah. Okay. All right. I didn't recognize it. It didn't say Halo Collector there. Okay, just I had to look at the description, the brief Twitter description, be like, oh, of course that's who that is. All right. Okay, let us do it. This is our final story of the day. Let's do it. It's all good. So, what happened? Who won? Who won? What? Where? Who? Why? What? Oh, book title. Oh yeah. Okay, we'll just update the book title real fast. Thank you, Chris. They're still dueling. Good Lord. Okay, we're firing up this. How One Came. What's one? This is the Book of Wonder. Yeah, I'm just going to call this the Book of Wonder because some of his titles are so long. How One Came as was foretold. We're just going to call it the Book of Wonder. The Book of Wonder by Lord Dunsany. Thank you, Chris. There we go. Okay. Let's do it. How One Came, as was foretold, into the city of Never. The child that played about the terraces and gardens in sight of the Surrey hills never knew that it was he that should come to the ultimate city. Never knew that he should see the underpits, the barbicans, and the holy minarets of the mightiest city known. I think of him now as a child with a little red watering can, going about the gardens on a summer's day that lit the warm south country. His imagination delighted with all tales of quite little adventures, and all the while there was reserved for him that feat at which men wonder. Looking in other directions, away from the Surrey hills, through all his infancy, he saw that precipice, that wall above wall and mountain above mountain, stands at the edge of the world, and in perpetual twilight, alone with the moon and the sun, holds up the inconceivable city of Never. To tread its streets he was destined. Prophecy knew it. He had the magic halter, and a worn old rope it was. An old wayfaring woman had given it to him. It had the power to hold any animal whose race had never known captivity, such as the unicorn, the hippogriff, Pegasus, dragons, and wyverns. But with a lion, giraffe, camel, or horse, it was useless. A toggle switch. How often we have seen that city of Never, that marvel of the nations. Not when it is night in the world, and we can see no further than the stars. Not when the sun is shining where we dwell, dazzling our eyes. But when the sun has set on some stormy days, all at once repentant at evening, and those glittering cliffs reveal themselves, which we almost take to be clouds, and it is twilight with us as it is forever with them. Then, on their gleaming summits, we see those golden domes that overpeer the edges of the world, and seem to dance with dignity and calm in that gentle light of evening that is wonder's native haunt. Then does the city of Never, unvisited and afar, look long at her sister, the world. It had been prophesied that he should come there. They knew it when the pebbles were being made, and before the isles of coral were given unto the sea. And thus the prophecy came unto fulfillment, and passed into history, and so at length to oblivion, out of which I drag it as it goes floating by, into which I shall one day tumble. The hippogriffs dance before dawn in the upper air. Long before sunrise flashes upon our lawns, they go to glitter in light that has not yet come to the world. And as the dawn works up from the ragged hills, and the stars feel it, they go slanting earthwards, till sunlight touches the tops of the tallest trees, and the hippogriffs alight with a rattle of quills and fold their wings, and gallop and gambol away till they come to some prosperous, wealthy, detestable town. And they leap at once from the fields and soar away from the sight of it, pursued by the horrible smoke of it, until they come again to the pure blue air. He whom prophecy had named from of old to come to the city of Never, went down one midnight with his magic halter to a lakeside where the hippogriffs alighted at dawn, for the turf was soft there, and they could gallop far before they came to a town, and there he waited, hidden near their hoof marks. And the stars paled a little, and grew indistinct, but there was no other sign as yet of the dawn, when there appeared far up in the deeps of the night 2 little saffron specks, then 4 and 5. It was the hippogriffs dancing and twirling around in the sun. Another flock joined them. There were 12 of them now. They danced there, flashing their colors back to the sun. They descended in wide curves slowly. Trees down on earth revealed against the sky, jet black each delicate twig. A star disappeared from a cluster, now another, and dawn came on like music, like a new song. Ducks shot by to the lake from still dark fields of corn. Far voices uttered, a color grew upon water, and still the hippogriffs gloried in the light, reveling up in the sky. But when pigeons stirred on the branches, and the first small bird was abroad, and little coots from the rushes ventured to peer about, then there came down on a sudden, with a thunder of feathers, the hippogriffs. And as they landed from their celestial heights, all bathed with the day's first sunlight, the man whose destiny it was, as from of old, to come to the city of Never, sprang up and caught the last with the magic halter. It plunged, but could not escape it, for the hippogriffs are of the uncaptured races, and magic has power over the magical. So the man mounted it, and it soared again for the heights whence it had come, as a wounded beast goes home. But when they came to the heights, that venturous rider saw huge and fair to the left of him the destined city of Never, and he beheld the towers of Lel and Lek, Nearib and Akathuma, and the cliffs of Toldanarba, a-glistening in the twilight like an alabaster statue of the evening. Towards them he wrenched the halter, towards Toldanarba and the underpits. The wings of the hippogriff roared as the halter turned him. Of the underpits, who shall tell? Their mystery is secret. It is held by some that they are the sources of night, and that darkness pours from them at evening upon the world. while others hint that knowledge of these might undo our civilization. There watched him ceaselessly from the underpits those eyes whose duty it is, from further within and deeper. The bats that dwell there arose when they saw the surprise in the eyes. The sentinels on the bulwarks beheld that stream of bats, and lifted up their spears, as it were for war. Nevertheless, when they perceived that war for which they watched was not now come upon them, they lowered their spears, and suffered him to enter, and he passed whirring through the earthward gateway. Even so he came, as foretold, to the city of Never, perched upon Toldanarba, and saw late twilight on those pinnacles that knew no other light. All the domes were of copper, but the spires on their summits were gold. Little steps of onyx ran all this way and that. With cobbled agates were its streets a glory. Through small square panes of rose quartz the citizens looked from their houses. To them, as they looked abroad, the world far off seemed happy. Clad though that city was in one robe always, in twilight, yet was its beauty worthy of even so lovely a wonder. City and twilight were both peerless, but for each other. Built of a stone unknown in the world we tread were its bastions, quarried we know not where, but called by the gnomes abyx. It so flashed back to the twilight its glories, color for color, that none can say of them where their boundary is, and which the eternal twilight, and which the city of Never. They are the twin-born children, the fairest daughters of wonder. Time had been there, but not to work destruction. He had turned to a fair, pale green the domes that were made of copper. The rest he had left untouched, even he, the destroyer of cities, by what bribe I know not averted. Nevertheless, they often wept in Never for change and passing away, mourning catastrophes in other worlds, and they built temples sometimes to ruined stars that had fallen flaming down from the Milky Way, giving them worship still, when by us long since forgotten. Other temples they have, who knows to what divinities? And he that was destined alone of men to come to the city of Never was well content to behold it, as he trotted down its agate street, with the wings of his hippogriff furled, seeing at either side of him marvel on marvel, of which even China is ignorant. Then, as he neared the city's further rampart by which no inhabitant stirred, and looked in a direction to which no houses faced with any rose-pink windows, he suddenly saw far off, dwarfing the mountains, an even greater city. Whether that city was built upon the twilight, or whether it rose from the coasts of some other world, he did not know. He saw it dominate the city of Never, and strove to reach it. But at this unmeasured home of unknown colossi, the hippogriff shied frantically, and neither the magic halter nor anything that he did could make the monster face it. At last, from the city of Never's lonely outskirts, where no inhabitants walked, the rider turned slowly earthward. He knew now why all the windows faced this way. The denizens of the twilight gazed at the world, and not at a greater than them. Then from the last step of the earthward stairway, like lead past the underpits and down the glittering face of Tol Danarba, down from the overshadowed glories of the gold-tipped city of Never, and out of perpetual twilight, swooped the man on his winged monster. The wind that slept at the time leapt up like a dog at their onrush. It uttered a cry and ran past them. Down on the world, it was morning. Night was roaming away with his cloak trailed behind him. White... Good Lord. There we go. Well, thank Mr. Galen. And, wow, a gift sub for Dr. Eye Hacker. That's very cool. Nice. Thank you. We're just going to quickly finish up our story here. He's been doing that a lot. I like that. Thank you. Down on the world, it was morning. Night was roaming away with his cloak trailed behind him. White mists turned over and over as he went. The orb was gray, but it glittered. Lights blinked surprisingly in early windows. Forth over wet, dim fields went cows from their houses. Even in this hour touched the fields again the feet of the hippogriff. And the moment that the man dismounted and took off his magic halter, the hippogriff flew slanting away with a whir, going back to some airy dancing place of his people. And he that surmounted glittering Tol Danarba, and came alone of men to the city of Never, has his name and his fame among nations. But he and the people of that twilit city well know two things unguessed by other men. They that there is another city fairer than theirs, and he a deed unaccomplished. And that, my friends, brings us to the end of book club. What is that giant chicken? I don't know what that was, Chris. Very good. Wow. Okay. That was a fun. That's I really like that one. Yeah, Lord Dunsany. He's a real trippy writer. I like his stuff. But that's it. And so thank you, Mr. Galen. That gift sub was very awesome. Look at that, the weekly sub goal. This week has been crazy. Last week's been crazy too. I have like a sub goal is 3. That's my goal for the week. Three channel subs, and it's been 18 this week. Not time to reset it till tomorrow. Tillable Cat wants us to do Harry Potter. I can't do that. Because I don't have permission. Everything we do is in the public domain, Tillable Cat. That would be awesome. But anyway, here's the chat's coming in. Skip's back with us. Yeah, we missed him a few days this week. Oh boy, it's all going by too fast. Shadowtronics was here. Oh, we missed Lady Death. No Lady Death today, but Shadowtronics doing a fine job. Thank you, sir. Shadowtronics throwing down some embers. Thank you. Thanks to the Shadow fam, the whole Shadow fam. Mrs. Shadow Pops, the Shadow Huskies, they do their part too. Nana Shuffle, wow, there's a bunch of sparkages coming in from that, and a bunch from everyone else too. It all adds up. It really does add up. It's been quite remarkable. And look at them fine stickers. I need to get one more sticker from Mr. Henning. I need to let him know what it is. So new followers. Mr. Ian, thank you for coming over from Twitch. Thank you. Lander Gardenier, Mr. Winko, Ian, Ovies, Mr. Rotate, thank you for those new follows. Very cool. And a bunch of hosts, I love those. I really do like those a lot. Gifted subs, Mr. Art by Galen too, Dr. Eye Hacker, and from what I understand, Dr. Eye Hacker has just become a new partnered streamer here on Mixer. If that is what I was reading correctly earlier. So there we go, congratulations. Oh, is that right? Yes, it is. There we go. Fantastic. That's that's a big milestone.
Hacker sent 50 embers with a message. Olive, you have a wonderful night, Carrington.
Well, thank you very much, Dr. iHacker, and congratulations once again. Yeah, getting the let's Shadow. If you could give Dr. iHacker a shout out. I'm gonna I just threw her a follow myself earlier tonight there. Yeah, I missed this week's list of new members. I think that they're adding about. I think about 5 a week right now. Yeah, it's still pretty rare territory. You have to jump through a lot of hoops to get there. Anyway, here is where are we at? We are it's 4 o'clock. Okay, so I'm ending my stream. I got to take care of a few things IRL. We're going to be back at 6 p.m. Pacific. Like in less than 2 hours, an hour and a half. In an hour and a half, we're going to be back. We're going to be watching Plan 9 from Outer Space. I think you'll like it. It's very good. It's actually really bad. It's bad. But it's Bela Lugosi and Vampira, and directed by Ed Wood, who is just atrocious. It's going to be fun. We're just going to have a good time watching that. It is, yeah. 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, and then after that, assuming my Neverwinter friends are still around, we're going to do some Neverwintering. Some Dungeons and Dragons, dungeon exploration, do some missions and the like. Gonna try that. That is a little later tonight. Let's see, about 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern is movie night, and then after that will be probably Neverwinter. We were doing some Phantasy Star Online too last night. Good lord, that game is crazy. It's crazy. Did that did the oh yeah we did. Okay, very cool. Okay, but in the meantime, I gotta go. I gotta take care of a few things. Gotta hit the kitchen, but I don't need to tell you what I'm doing. I'm doing some stuff. So anyway, thank you once again for tuning in. We will not be restreaming this over to Twitch or Periscope or YouTube. So if you are on those platforms right now and you want to join us later tonight for gaming or for movie night, yeah, that's all on Mixer. Mixer.com/CarringtonTV. That's me. Only my book stuff I'm restreaming. So so Monday through Thursday. Actually, tomorrow we're starting this off again. Well, continuing with that. Monday through Thursday, 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. 2.5 hours of book club reading most days of the week. And that's what I restream right now. So have a great night. We'll catch you in an hour and a half. Yeah. Catch you all soon. And thank you again, Mr. Galen. Mr. Galen. Oh, hey, you've already finished your Final Fantasy VII, right? You're doing a second playthrough on that. I think you said.